The bond of desire. Synopsis. She might wonder why I've changed. I want to tell you, Puranee, but if I do, things will never be the same. So I'd rather not tell you. He turned to smile slightly, meticulously combing his hair. Pojana was once a gentle man who worked passionately at the job he loved. He gave everyone genuine smiles. On the night he made a mistake with Panida, a stranger seeking help, he tried to take responsibility. However, someone as tainted as her refused it. That night resulted in an unintentional pregnancy. Puranee, Panida's younger sister, was the most mischievous and lively girl in her school. She had a secret crush on the gentle Pojana. But when he left his role as a physical education teacher and they met again as employer and employee, she discovered he was no longer the kind Teacher Poj she had adored. Why has Pojana changed? Stay tuned. Chapter 1. A young girl dressed in a fully concealing outfit, except for the upper half of her face, was glancing upward, searching for security cameras. She carefully sidestepped the guard while slipping something into her coat. Once she zipped it up, she casually walked to the counter to pay for her snacks. 138 baht, please. Pooh or Puranee handed 200 baht bills to the cashier, but a voice from behind interrupted her. And pay for what you've hidden inside, young lady. Ha! The girl spun around, her eyes widening in shock. Her mouth hung open as if she had just seen a ghost. Standing just 3 steps away was Teacher Pojana, arms crossed, staring straight at her. The atmosphere in the store turned as chilling as a graveyard. Teacher Poj, what are you talking about? Pooh asked, taking her change from the cashier, grabbing her bag of snacks, and strutting toward the door. But her persistent physical education teacher wouldn't let up. He followed her outside. Puranee, why are you like this? He demanded, catching up and grabbing her arm. Hey, teacher. What are you doing? I'll call that police officer over there. She gestured toward an officer enjoying his coffee and bread nearby. Pojana sighed deeply. Fine. But I have something to ask you. What? Pooh looked bored, her exhaustion evident from staying up all night playing online games. She had snuck into her sister's room earlier to steal money for snacks. The young teacher's face flushed, confusing the girl. Teacher. I'm really sleepy, she yawned dramatically. Finally, Pojana blurted out. Did you go out anywhere last night? He tried to maintain eye contact with the rebellious senior. Pojana was a new teacher in the final semester, and Puranee was infamous for skipping classes and lying. Other than her good looks, she had no redeeming qualities. No. I played games all night. Look at my eyes if you don't believe me. Dark circles underlined her eyes. Frustrated, Pojana let her go. Exams are coming soon. You should. Whatever, teacher. I'm not going to college. Getting money from my parents is good enough. Bye. With that, Puranee dashed off, leaving Pojana bewildered. What was on his mind? Well, last night, he had gone out drinking with some friends he hadn't seen in years. Being unaccustomed to alcohol, he ended up heavily intoxicated. While leaving the restroom, he accidentally bumped into a stunning woman with wavy hair. Sorry, he stammered. It's okay, she replied hurriedly, then suddenly pushed him against the wall and kissed him passionately. At that moment, Pojana's heart raced. He was too stunned and weak to resist. Her fiery kiss melted him like wax. Did you find her, bro? Someone rushed past yelling. Where the hell did she go? She's fast. Keep searching. That girl's drugged. She can't get far. Pojana heard every word. The woman who kissed him turned desperate eyes toward him and whispered softly. Please help me. They drugged me and want to sell me. Pojana nodded, shaking off his drunken haze. He took off his coat and wrapped it around the woman, leading her out of the venue. Are you okay? She trembled, rubbing her arms. I've been drugged. Can you take me to a hotel? Please help me. It was then Pojana noticed how much she resembled his troublesome student from school. Puranee. But she didn't respond. Shaking her head, she said, My name is Pa, not Puranee. The pursuers were closing in. Alarmed, Pojana didn't argue further. He grabbed her arm, hurried her to his old pickup truck, unlocked the doors, and ushered her inside before jumping in himself. Where do you live? Take me to a hotel, please. Just leave me there. I need to take you home. No. Why? Are you afraid your parents will see you? Pressed, she reluctantly admitted. Yes. Just take me to a hotel. Once the drug wears off, I'll go home myself. Pojana had no choice but to take her to a hotel as she insisted. However, when they got there, he found himself unable to leave. The woman sat curled up in the bathroom, letting the shower run over her trembling body. Thank you. You can leave now, she said, shivering despite the warm water. Are you sure you'll be okay? I've been through this before. I'll be fine, she replied. Pojana paced the room, his conscience weighing heavily. She might be just a stranger, but he couldn't abandon her. What if tomorrow's headlines reported her dead in the bathroom? He'd be implicated. There were cameras at the hotel. I'll stay until I'm sure you're safe, he declared firmly. Pa looked at him with a faint, sorrowful smile. Chapter 2. That night, the pure and innocent young teacher, as flawless as a swan, ended up crossing the line with a woman who eerily resembled one of his students. His compassion had betrayed him. Shivering violently, she chattered her teeth, trembling from the unbearable cold and despair. Enough. You're freezing, he said, walking over to the soaking wet woman. He turned off the shower, but before he could react, Pa threw her arms around him. Make me warm. I'm so cold, she pleaded. I'll get you a towel. Wait here, he offered. And no. Just help me. Please help me, she insisted, holding him tightly and looking up at him with hopeless eyes. Please. No, I can't. I won't, he replied firmly. He had known this woman for less than 2 hours. It couldn't be that simple for two strangers to cross such a boundary. Not for him. Not like this. I'm a teacher. I have to set a good example. But before he could finish, she abruptly leaned in and kissed him. Her delicate hands cupped his face as she stood on her toes, pressing her lips against his and exploring his mouth with surprising passion. Caught off guard, the young teacher clumsily returned the kiss. It was his first intimate encounter with a woman, but she clearly had experience. Her fingers deftly began unbuttoning his shirt, and before he knew it, his favorite shirt was lying on the wet floor. Stop, please, he stammered, his breathing uneven. You don't have to take responsibility. Just help me, she whispered, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. The more he looked at her, the more she resembled Puranee, but she had insisted she wasn't. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Please. All right, okay, he relented. Her lips met his once more, and at 28 years old, Pojana experienced his first intimate encounter. And it was with a stranger. The waves of passion brought them together in the lonely night, a complicated mix of emotions enveloping them both. As their voices intertwined, Panida let herself be carried away by this kind-hearted stranger, feeling something she couldn't quite explain. As they reached their climax, their faces twisted with emotion, their bodies trembled, and they were left breathless, yet smiling. Hey Pa! When did you get back? And whose clothes are you wearing? Pa froze in her tracks as she was about to enter her room. She turned to her younger sister. Last night, she had narrowly avoided being sold across the border, thanks to the man who had saved her. I just got back. I stayed at a friend's house. These are her clothes, she lied. Oh. Must be a guy friend, huh? Puranee and Panida were full-blooded sisters, looking so alike they could be mistaken for twins. However, Panida was 2 years older and had a birthmark on her left breast, which inspired their mother to name her Panida. In contrast, Puranee, with her flawless rosy skin, was given a name that reflected her beauty. You're not going to answer me and just leave? Puranee asked, still curious, but her sister had already disappeared into her room. Huffing, Puranee flared her nostrils at the closed door before retreating to her own room with her bag of snacks. Inside her room, Panida took off the coat she was wearing. Beneath it was a set of clothes the man, who had called himself a teacher, had hurriedly bought for her at the hotel entrance. They were practical and masculine, yet they fit her well. She touched the marks on her neck, evidence of the night's passion. Despite his lack of experience by the second round, his ardor rivaled that of any seasoned lover. Sitting at the edge of the bed, Panida opened her bag to reveal a stack of cash. Though humiliated by the dangerous nature of her work, it was necessary for her and her sister to survive. She was determined to see Puranee graduate from university. It was her dream. Months had passed without any contact from their parents. Money was dwindling, forcing Panida to work as a hostess at a bar. Her first brush with tragedy was when a politician spiked her drink, leading to her first assault. Though she eventually accepted her fate, she switched jobs, only to encounter misfortune again. Last night, she had been tricked into drinking an entire bottle with the promise of 300,000 baht. Instead, she was drugged again. Luckily, she escaped with her bag of money, running into that kind-hearted stranger. Now, sitting on her bed, she smiled, thinking of his kindness, the coat he gave her, his warm gestures. Even though she had slipped away before he woke, she didn't want him to feel obligated to take responsibility. It wasn't necessary. It wouldn't be fair to such a good man. She wasn't a good woman. Not even close. Chapter 3. Monday had come around again. Pojana went to work as usual, feeling as though what had happened on Saturday was nothing but a dream. Whoosh. Thud. Lost in thought, a volleyball, struck by a group of mischievous students, came flying and hit the physical education teacher squarely on the head. Stars exploded in his vision as he fell flat on his back in the middle of the field. Dazed. Teacher Poj. Teacher Poj. The students rushed over, including Puranee, who smiled mischievously. She had aimed the ball at him on purpose. I'm fine. I'm fine. Go on, keep playing, he said, waving them off. Wow, what a model PE teacher, one of the students quipped. The others ran back to their game, except for Puranee, who extended her hand as if to help. But when the teacher reached for it, she pulled it back with a giggle. Pojana got up and stared at her silently. You did it on purpose, didn't you, Puranee? What? No way. The ball flew towards you on its own. It was an accident, teacher, she replied with mock innocence. You're impossible, he sighed, though he found it hard to stay angry. Her face reminded him of someone else. Do you have a twin, Puranee? He asked suddenly. Ha! No, I only have an older sister. An older sister? Does she look a lot like you? Puranee, though only a high school student, was sharp and clever beyond her years, with a mischievous streak that could outdo anyone, even boys. Well, no, not really. My sister's face is plain, but I'm gorgeous, she said with a smirk. Go back to playing, he said, shooing her away. Puranee made a face at him before running back to the game. Her volleyball skills were exceptional, and whichever team she was on always seemed to win. Yay! The students' cheers distracted Pojana, and he found himself watching Puranee. She shone like the sun on the field, yet in the classroom, she was like a withering tree. Teacher, I have something to tell you, she called, running up to him as he was about to get into his old truck. What is it? You need to drive me home, and I'll tell you on the way. What are you up to, Puranee? Come on. You won't regret it, I promise. Reluctantly, he let her climb into the truck. Her house was on the way, after all. All right, what is it? I know why you asked me about Saturday night. You do. I know who you're looking for. And your coat is at my house. Screech. Teacher Poj, are you crazy? Puranee screamed, her head hitting the dashboard. Pojana quickly apologized. Sorry. I didn't mean to. Fumbling, he grabbed a first aid kit, doused some cotton with alcohol, and reached out to treat her wound. Puranee recoiled. What are you doing, teacher? I'm treating your wound. Look, you're bleeding. Puranee hesitated before letting him clean the cut. Though rebellious and unruly, she lacked proper guidance, unlike her sister Panida, who had at least been somewhat disciplined by their mother. In that moment, she changed her mind about telling him the truth about her sister. All done, he said. Teacher. Pojana was surprised by her smile. She had never smiled at anyone before, and when she did, it was strikingly similar to Miss Pa. Puranee became even more certain. Her teacher had definitely encountered her sister that night. So it's out now, she teased. Pojana's face turned pale. Did this mean he had been with a student? Why didn't you admit it was you that night, Puranee? He shifted nervously in his seat, while Puranee leaned closer, relishing in his discomfort. Because I like you, teacher. Puranee, what are you doing? That night was extremely dangerous. Those people could have killed you. Her teacher's words startled her. What kind of work was her sister doing? Fueled by curiosity and mischief, she grabbed his arm, ignoring his attempts to pull away. "Stop it, Puranee." "Oh, teacher." That night. His face turned even paler. "That night. I didn't know it was you, Puranee. Did you take emergency contraception?" This time, it was Puranee's turn to go pale. She released his arm and stared at him in shock. "Contraception? What are you talking about?" "Yes. You said you would take it." Smack. "Ow. Ouch." Puranee slapped him across the face with surprising force, her fiery eyes glaring at him. It was clear now. She wasn't the woman from that night. "You perverted teacher." Pojana froze, speechless. He could only stare at her in stunned silence. "Just you wait. If anything happens, I'll come back and kill you," she yelled. Bang. She slammed the car door as she got out, leaving him flinching. Watching her flag down a bus, Pojana felt a whirlwind of emotions. "Am I in the wrong here?" he muttered to himself, only to answer his own question. "Of course I'm wrong. I have to be." Ugh. He could only hope that Puranee wouldn't end up pregnant. Otherwise, the guilt and complications would crush him completely. Chapter 4. "Hey! Where are you going, all dressed up like that?" Puranee barged into her sister's room. Panida smiled at her. "Pooh, I've got your snack money," Panida said, handing some cash to her younger sister. But Puranee turned her face away in disgust. "No, I don't want your dirty money." Panida's face went pale. "Puranee, I thought you were working because of your brains. Turns out, I hate you." Tears welled up in Panida's eyes. She didn't argue and let her sister's scolding continue unchecked. "Don't strip yourself for money on my behalf anymore. I don't want to touch your filthy money." With that, Puranee stormed into her room. Panida stared at the money in her hand, feeling worthless and drained. "Puranee, I never wanted this either. I hate it. I hate it so much," she sobbed. Panida's despair carried her to the city park that evening. She sat watching joggers, people feeding fish, and some feeding birds. She remained slumped until the late hours when someone jogging past stopped and turned back. "Puranee!" Panida looked up, startled. Pojana was standing there, swallowing nervously as he recognized her. Panida, her makeup heavy for her new job that night, was just as shocked. "I'm not Puranee. You've got the wrong person," she stammered, trying to leave. "Why are you dressed like this?" "You're still a student, Puranee," he said, misunderstanding her as his student. "I haven't been a student for years. And besides, I'm not Puranee. She's my younger sister." Her words left Pojana momentarily speechless, though he found himself believing her. Puranee was far too mischievous and wild to carry the composed air this woman had. "Well, then why are you sitting here?" he asked awkwardly. Her beautifully made-up face gave a sad smile as she turned the question back on him. "You know Puranee?" The young teacher, clad in his jogging gear, sat on a nearby wooden bench and nodded. "Yes, I'm her PE teacher." "Does she study well?" At home, the sisters barely spoke despite being the only family they had. Their interactions were limited to matters of necessity, and Puranee's coldness stemmed from their parents abandoning them to face loneliness far too often. Pojana scratched his head, hesitant to reveal Puranee's antics. "Well, she's very dedicated when it comes to sports. She's always loved thrilling activities. Her life is so vibrant, but mine just grows darker with each passing day," Panida murmured. Moved by compassion, Pojana gave her a reassuring smile. But as he recalled their intimate night, his heart began to race. If he asked her out, what would she say? "It's getting late. Would you like to have dinner with me?" he offered. "I have to go to work," she replied. "Work?" "Yes, I'm starting at a new bar tonight. The last place." Well, something happened. The PE teacher couldn't understand why she insisted on such work. If she were willing to date him, he could support her. After all, he had dreams of a small, happy family. A father, a mother, and a child. Panida stood, her perfume lingering in the air. Pojana sighed as she turned to leave. "I should get going. Thank you for keeping me company." "Wait," he said, standing up. Panida looked at him, puzzled. "I'm single," Pojana blurted out. "What?" Her well-defined face showed confusion, followed by a faint smile. I'd like to date you, Pa, he confessed. Panida froze, her heart fluttering before sinking into despair. While she wanted to embrace his invitation, her past made her feel unworthy. It wouldn't be right. If you're offering because of that night, don't worry about it. A night worker like me knows how to take precautions, she said. With that, Pojana forced a weak smile as he watched her walk away. He sighed and told himself, "All right, Pojana. You did your best." She had turned him down. She had her own path to walk, and he needed to let go and focus on his own work. Pojana's house could only be described as a mansion. He wasn't just an ordinary PE teacher. He was the son of a renowned politician. But his father's debauchery made him vow never to follow in his footsteps. Today was unusual. His father was home, a rare occurrence. Normally, he would be at billiard clubs or golf courses, and only returned home when absolutely nothing else was left to do. His mother had left the family when he was young, fleeing to some unknown part of the world or perhaps starting a new life with another family. Pojana bore no grudge against her. Just knowing she was happy was enough for him. When his father, Sutan, saw his son, he immediately sent the young maid out of the room. Pojana tried to leave too, but his father stopped him. "Tut tut tut. Pojana, my son. You must be about 180 centimeters tall now, right?" Pojana reluctantly turned back. 175 centimeters, Dad. "Ah, I was close. You're always like this," Pojana said with a cold smile, one that resembled his long-lost mother's expression. "I hate that smile. It's the kind that says, 'What did I do to deserve this?' The kind that makes me feel stupid while you act all high and mighty. Humph. Acting so smart. That girl Pa is probably being sold in some brothel by now." Pojana clenched his jaw. Sutan didn't care. Just seeing his son upset seemed to satisfy him. "Sit. I have something to discuss with you." Pojana reluctantly sat, wanting to get it over with. "Yes. Quit that job and take over our business." The business was a chain of bars, a legacy of Sutan's filth. All 15 establishments reeked of debauchery, stained with the tears and cries of young girls. Pojana glared at the 54-year-old man before him. Why wouldn't he just leave him alone? "No." Chapter 5. Ha ha ha. "Really? And why not?" "Because I don't want to be as corrupt as you, Father." "Ah, but we're father and son, Poj. How can you not be as corrupt as I am?" Pojana smirked with disdain. "I was born from my mother." Sutan sprang to his feet, his face flushed red with anger. "Then why do you call me your father?" "Because I have to. What else should I call you?" The corrupt politician struggled to maintain his composure against his son's taunts. His son had always been defiant, so he sat back down and forced a calm smile. "But I have an offer for you." Pojana remained silent, his face stern. "I know where your mother is. And she isn't doing well right now." "Father." "See. You love your mother, but you don't love me, even though I never abandoned you like she did." "She didn't abandon me. She left you," he retorted, his heart aching. "Then why didn't she take you with her, Pojana?" The PE teacher fell silent. He wasn't sure, but the housemaid had once told him that his mother feared he would suffer if she took him along. "Tell me where she is." "I want to see her," he demanded. Fine, I'll tell you," Sutan said with a sinister grin. Someone's moment of despair was his greatest pleasure. But you'll have to quit that worthless school first. Teaching was a profession Pojana was proud of. He had loved sports since childhood and had worked hard to become a PE teacher. But now, the man he was forced to call father was threatening to destroy his future. "If I resign, will you really tell me where my mother is?" "Of course. And you'll have to take over my work too." Pojana swallowed hard, his heart heavy with anguish. "All right, father." He had no choice but to agree. If he didn't go to his mother, she might be suffering even more. The news of Pojana's resignation spread quickly at school. His colleagues lamented the loss of such a kind-hearted teacher, and many students were equally upset. "Teacher Poj. Teacher Poj, wait." Puranee ran towards him, panting. The young teacher, about to get into his truck, stopped. "Puranee, are you here to say goodbye?" he asked, a small smile breaking through. "What happened? Is it because you're mad about what I did yesterday?" That's right, he thought. Yesterday, this girl had slapped him so hard his cheek still stung. Yes, I'm mad. So, you'd better behave, Puranee. Stop being a troublemaker so your sister won't have to worry, okay? He said, ruffling her hair. Tears welled up in Puranee's eyes as she grabbed his arm. Then don't resign, teacher. Please, she pleaded. I have to take care of my mother. She's unwell, he explained, touched by her reluctance to see him leave. To his surprise, Puranee threw her arms around him. Teacher, I love you. You've taken care of me like a father. Thank you so much. At first, Pojana was startled, but her words made him smile. Ah, you little rascal. Haha. Puranee quickly let go, suddenly feeling embarrassed. She frowned at him instead, confusing him. Who's your kid, Teacher Poj? Humph. I just gave you a little hug, and now you're calling me your kid? Ugh, she huffed before running away, leaving Pojana utterly baffled. What was that? This girl, sigh. But despite everything, he smiled, thinking of Puranee's mischievous antics. She was the most troublesome student he'd ever had. As he gazed at the school building and the flagpole, he vowed to cherish these memories, knowing he wouldn't experience this kind of happiness again. For months later, Panida looked pale and unwell. She felt too sick to work and returned home early to rest. Why do you look so pale, sis? Puranee asked, her tone maternal. Lately, she had been kinder to her sister. I just feel dizzy and nauseous. When will you stop working at those bars, sis? Her sister pressed. Now that Puranee had graduated high school and decided not to pursue further education, their debates over this issue were endless. I enjoy drinking poo, Panida replied wearily, sitting down. Puranee walked behind her and began massaging her head. Don't lie, sis. Ah, you little brat. Well, I'm not going to college anyway. I hate studying in classrooms. It's boring, Puranee declared, further irritating Panida. So, what are you going to do? Correspondence courses. The mischievous girl shook her head. Nope. I'm going to work. Work is learning too. Pfft, you don't understand. Or do you want me to sell my body? Did a ghost whisper that nonsense to you? Her sister's words sparked a realization in Panida. She abruptly stood up, startling Puranee. Sis. What's wrong? I just remembered I forgot to buy some headache medicine. Oh, I'll get it for you. I was planning to buy some throat lozenges anyway, Puranee offered, hoping to drop off job applications on the way. No, it's fine. I'll go myself. Grabbing her bag, Panida prepared to leave. Puranee watched her, puzzled. What's the big deal, sis? Afraid I'll get the wrong medicine? We'll talk later. I'm in a hurry. Panida's haste made Puranee suspicious. She decided to follow her sister discreetly. Panida went to a clinic and stayed inside for nearly half an hour. When she came out, her face looked even more troubled. Puranee wanted to confront her but chose to stay hidden behind a bench instead. What's going on with you, sis? Puranee vowed to find out. Her sister had done so much for her, and now it was her turn to help ease Panida's worries. Chapter 6. Excuse me, ma'am. What was my sister here for just now? Puranee approached the nurse at the counter, forgetting that no clinic would reveal a patient's confidential information. I'm sorry, but I can't tell you that. But she's my sister. Then you should ask her, the nurse replied politely. Puranee frowned and stormed outside, annoyed. She decided to take petty revenge by puncturing the nurse's car tire. Laughing as she finished, she muttered, If you won't tell me, fine. Let's see you get home now. Despite her antics, Puranee wasn't ready to give up on uncovering her sister's secret. That night, after ensuring Panida had fallen asleep, she sneaked into her room to search for medical papers. Instead, she found a pregnancy test. What's this? Looks like something to test for something, she murmured. Smart in many ways but clueless when it came to academics, Puranee grabbed the box to read the label. A pregnancy test. Does that mean? Oh no! She covered her mouth in shock, her eyes wide. Panida is pregnant. Puranee turned toward her sister's open door. There stood Panida, looking as if she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Puranee. Panida. Who's the father? Who's the father of your baby? Puranee blurted, shaking her sister in panic. Panida gently pushed her away. Stop shaking me, Pooh. You're hurting me. Puranee stepped back, nodding. I don't know who it is, Panida said softly. You're lying. It's Teacher Poj, isn't it? Panida's startled reaction gave her away. How do you know that? Puranee pressed her lips together. So it is him. You have to tell him. But I'll tell him myself, Puranee volunteered. Will he accept it, Pooh? He might already have someone else in his life, Panida said uncertainly. Her guess wasn't entirely wrong. But not for the reasons she thought. At a luxury condo in the heart of the city. Get up. I said get up right now. A tall, well-built man yanked a woman to her feet. She was stark naked, a no-name actress trying to earn extra cash by entertaining Pojana. Lucy, as she was called, struggled to stand. Her body bore the marks of bites and bruises. This man was sadistic, treating her as though she were an object devoid of feelings. Stand properly, Lucy, he ordered. I can't, Mr. Poj. You're too rough, she whimpered. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. She was pushed onto the sofa, and the naked man followed her. Lucy screamed until he finally finished with her, releasing her from his grip. Here's your money, he said coldly. At first, Lucy was shaken, but the sight of the cash soothed her. It'll pass, she thought. The amount was substantial. Thank you, Mr. Poj. Feel free to call me any time, she said, trying to seduce him with a caress. Pojana yanked his arm away and walked into the bathroom, paying her no further attention. 3 months ago, Pojana had decided he no longer wanted to be a good person. Meeting his mother, the woman he had idolized as his source of emotional support, turned into a nightmare. His mother had been in constant contact with his father. Worse, she was a prominent brothel madam in the South. The angelic image he had of her shattered instantly. Nothing could bring back the kind, gentle man Pojana once was. He had embraced the shady business his father had built, much to Sutton's delight. His son had finally stepped into the family trade. Now, Pojana soaked in a bathtub, a glass of wine in hand. He drank deeply, surrounded by the silence of his meaningless nights. He longed for love, but it seemed love didn't exist. For a fleeting moment, an image surfaced in his mind. A mischievous smile from someone familiar. Amidst the darkness that enveloped his life, this memory brought the faintest curve to his lips. Puranee. That little troublemaker. The image was faint, but it was the only shred of happiness he had left. Chapter 7. 2 months passed quickly. In addition to managing numerous shady businesses, Pojana also needed a legitimate, clean enterprise for appearances, something common in his circle. Today, he decided to visit his company. A pile of job applications had been sitting untouched for months, so he figured it was time to look through them, if only as a formality, to finally hire a personal assistant. Here's your coffee, Mr. Poj, said Veena, a beautiful woman who entered with a suggestive smile. But Pojana wasn't interested. He knew she was one of his father's women and had no desire to share. Thanks. There's no need to hire a secretary, you know. If you just ask Mr. Sutton, he'll let you have Veena as your assistant, she hinted, clearly tired of catering to an aging man and longing for someone younger and more attractive. You're my father's favorite, Veena. I wouldn't dare, he replied. His words were polite, but in truth, he simply didn't care. Pojana was no longer the naive, sensitive young man he once was. He had become a man hardened by life, mirroring his father in more ways than he wanted to admit. You're too modest, Veena trailed off. This one will do, he said abruptly, handing her a random application to avoid further conversation. Veena pursed her lips, frustrated. Understood. I'll take my leave now, he added, walking out. Once he was gone, Veena glanced at the chosen application. She assumed Pojana had a genuine interest in this person. Miss Puranee Gamborisut? Who comes up with names like this? And her face. So annoying. Despite her annoyance, she contacted the applicant, believing Pojana was serious about hiring her. PPA. PPA. I got a job at a big company. Puranee ran to tell Panida, who was now battling leukemia. Her sister was trying her best to preserve her life for as long as possible. Oh, PPA. I'm so sorry. I couldn't reach anyone. Not Mom, Dad, or Teacher Poj. I don't know where they are, Puranee lamented. For the past 2 months, she had been searching for Pojana and her parents, but it was as if they had vanished, leaving the two sisters to fend for themselves. "What kind of job, Pooh?" Panida asked, coughing. "A secretary. I can't believe they hired me. I only applied because you told me to. Do your best, okay?" Panida placed a hand on her stomach. Thankfully, the hard work she had done in previous months had left her with some money, though it was nearly gone now. "I have to report to work this afternoon. Will you be okay here?" "I'll be fine. Just give it your all." "Of course. And your nephew's rooting for me too, right?" The baby in Panida's belly was a boy. The sisters had already decided on the name Pojana, to honor the man who fathered him. Panida didn't love the child's father, but she wanted her baby to have a dad. She feared she might not live long enough to raise him herself. Her refusal to terminate the pregnancy meant she couldn't undergo radiation or chemotherapy, leaving her to endure immense suffering. But she never shared her pain with her sister. She wanted to remain a strong older sibling for her. Dressed in her best outfit, Puranee headed to meet her prospective boss. Veena had directed her to a condo and provided the room number. "Is this how everyone reports for work?" she had asked. "It depends on the employer's convenience," Veena replied. "If you don't want to do it, plenty of others will." Standing in front of the room, Puranee pressed the doorbell. The door soon opened, revealing a slightly intoxicated man in a dimly lit room. "Why are you here?" he asked brusquely. My name is..." "I didn't ask your name. I asked why you're here." "I'm your secretary. Veena told me to come," she explained. "Oh, Veena? Well, I'm busy today. Come back later," he said, dismissively waving her off. Fearing she'd lose the job, Puranee stepped boldly into the room. "Wait a minute. What are you doing in my room?" "I'm drunk, you know. I just wanted to report in. My name is Puranee, and I'm ready to work hard and diligently," she declared. Pojana froze, then turned on the lights. Their eyes met. "Teacher!" Puranee exclaimed, overjoyed. "Puranee, it's really you," he said, stunned. She ran to hug him. His body stiffened, showing no joy. "Teacher Poj. It's me, the one who used to tease you," she said. Yes, but go home, Puranee." Veena must have misunderstood. Puranee's face fell, fearing she wouldn't get the job. "I've changed. I'm a good person now. I'm ready to work," she insisted. "Stop hugging me. I'm not a teacher anymore," he said, pulling her away. His coldness shattered her. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "Just go home," he repeated. "No, I need to tell you something important," she said, swallowing her pain to deliver news about Panida. "What now?" "You remember my sister, PPA? She has cancer," she said, her voice trembling. Pojana was stunned, recalling how Panida had rejected him before. "So, what do you want me to do?" "She's pregnant. Pregnant with your child. She's 6 months along," Puranee revealed, her eyes welling with tears. The former teacher was shocked. It could have been good news, but he no longer saw himself as a good person. Still, he responded, "Take me to see Panida. Now." Chapter 8. "Finally we meet again," Panida said joyfully, carefully examining Pojana. "You look so much better than before." Pojana looked at Panida, feeling a deep pity for her. Despite her suffering, she had chosen to keep their child. To him, she was the most remarkable woman in the world. "I'll take full responsibility for everything. I'll find you a good hospital for your treatment," he said, holding her hand to comfort her. I don't want treatment. As long as the baby isn't born, I won't undergo treatment. It could harm the baby directly," she replied firmly. Not far away, Puranee sat quietly, her heart aching. Even Pojana, whose heart had hardened over time, was visibly sorrowful. He squeezed Panida's hand gently. "All right, I'll do as you wish. And may I ask you for one more favor?" "Of course, anything." Panida turned to her sister. Puranee looked at her, as if already knowing what she was about to say. "PPA." Puranee whispered. "I want to entrust my sister to you," Panida began. "If anything happens to me before I can start treatment, she'll be left all alone in this world. Just give her a job and keep her safe. That's all I ask." Pojana hesitated. He was no longer a good man, and his business was fraught with risks. One day, if the police cracked down, everything could come crashing down. But Panida was suffering greatly. She was enduring it all for their child. He couldn't let her down. Of course. You can rest easy. And while we wait for the baby, I'll bring in skilled doctors to help ease your pain. Thank you so much. I have no more worries now, Panida said, tears streaming down her face. Pojana hugged her gently and stroked her hair. Puranee turned her face away, unable to bear the sorrow in front of her. She refused to believe that her sister's illness was untreatable or that Panida would leave them any time soon. Puranee began her job at the company, handling a mountain of paperwork every day. However, Pojana made sure she worked only a few hours daily, knowing she wanted to stay close to her sister. He even allowed her to take work home. It's been a week now. Are you happy working with Mr. Pojana? Panida asked. Puranee pouted. Working with him? Hardly. He just shows up for a bit, points at things, and leaves. Who knows where he goes? Panida chuckled fondly. The baby was kicking strongly now. He probably has a lot of work to do, Pooh. The baby's kicking so hard. Puranee immediately moved closer, placing her hand on her sister's belly. Hey there. Are you upset because I teased your dad? Don't be too rough on Mom, okay? She might get hurt, she cooed. Her playful words brought joy to Panida, who watched her sister interact with the baby. Tears welled up in her eyes. She feared having to say goodbye to Puranee as her symptoms worsened. Every night, she prayed to live long enough to deliver her baby. After all, both her child and her sister had safe, secure lives awaiting them. She had no other regrets. What would you like to eat today, PPA? I'll find a recipe on YouTube, Puranee asked. The once aimless girl had transformed into a responsible young woman eager to learn. She prepared simple, heartwarming meals full of vegetables and fruits. Special treats included ginger tea and the best yogurt recipes. Pojana often sent supplies to Panida, ensuring her quality of life was as good as possible despite her illness. If not for the disease ravaging her body, Panida's life would have been perfect. PPA. I have to attend a dinner party with Mr. Poj tonight. I'll be back before 9 p.m. If you need anything, call me anytime, okay? Puranee said. Normally, Pojana wouldn't invite her to external events, but tonight was a gathering of executives at a renowned hotel. He thought it might open doors for her to find a better employer and brighter prospects. I'll be fine. I have your nephew here with me. Just make sure you don't embarrass Mr. Poj, okay? Of course. Oh, you care so much about me, don't you, dear sister? Puranee teased. The two sisters laughed together. It was a shame they hadn't grown closer sooner. If their past had been better, neither would have spent so many years in lonely isolation. Go take a shower. I'll help you with your makeup. Tonight, my little sister will be the belle of the ball. Yay! Make me look stunning. Puranee cheered. Of course, Panida replied. Puranee headed to the shower, and when she returned, Panida began doing her hair and makeup. As she worked, Panida smiled. Her little sister had truly grown up. Soon, Puranee would find love, have a family, and raise children. By then, Panida might no longer be around. But as long as Puranee was happy, that was all that mattered. Chapter 9. Mr. Poj. Is that really your secretary? Pojana was growing irritated. From the moment he stepped into the luxurious banquet hall, all eyes had been on Puranee, who stood beside him in a pale yellow dress. Her light makeup enhanced her radiance, drawing attention from men young and old. Yes, her name is Puranee, he replied reluctantly. The attention she garnered was making it nearly impossible to discuss business. She's stunning, truly beautiful. Mr. Fat is complimenting you, Puranee, he said, feigning a smile despite his annoyance. Thank you, Puranee said, bowing politely as if she were addressing her parents. Pojana suppressed a grin as the two moved away to grab some food. I'm starving, and this dress is so annoying, she muttered. Stand still. I'll help you get some food, Pojana said, scooping items onto her plate. He had to admit, tonight she truly was as beautiful as everyone had been saying. It wasn't an exaggeration. Well, if it isn't our Mr. Poj. 3 men approached them, and Pojana greeted them with a cheerful smile. Puranee glanced at them and noticed their stunned expressions as they looked at her, making her blush. Who's that? She's gorgeous. Is she one of your girls? No, she's my secretary. Wow. Can I have her number? Asked the man in the burgundy suit, stepping closer. But Pojana blocked his path with his arm. Stop right there. This one's off limits. Oh, keeping her for yourself? They joked, laughing heartily. Don't be ridiculous. She's the sister of someone I know, so I have to take good care of her, Pojana explained. Ah, I could take good care of her too. Miss, are you interested in working for my company? Here's my card, said Chukrat, handing his business card to Puranee. She accepted it with wide eyes. MMC Auto Corporation? Wow. Snatch. Before she could process further, her boss grabbed the card and tucked it into his jacket pocket. The three men jeered. This is eating time. My guest here is starving, he said dismissively. Oh, so he's just worried she's hungry, Puranee thought to herself, though she remained genuinely intrigued by Chukrat's offer. Compared to her current job handling dull paperwork, it seemed far more exciting. She decided she'd ask about it on the way home. Later, Chukrat managed to find another opportunity to approach her. That card must have been confiscated, so here's another one, he said, handing her a replacement. I'm offering a starting salary of 70,000 baht per month, plus bonuses. Puranee was ecstatic. 70,000? But I only have a high school diploma. Chukrat looked slightly disappointed but remained optimistic. That's not an issue. If Mr. Poj hired you, you must have potential. She was about to accept when another man bumped into her, causing her to stumble. He caught her arm to steady her. Sorry about that. It's fine, she replied, flustered. Where's Mr. Poj? There he is, coming this way, someone replied. The tall, stern figure of Pojana approached them. I promised your sister you'd be home by 8 p.m., he said firmly. She was about to argue that it was supposed to be 9 p.m., but he interrupted. We're leaving now. Goodbye, he said, grabbing her hand and pulling her away. As they left, Chukrat called after her. Miss Puranee, call me if you're interested. Okay, she replied. No, you're not interested in anything, Pojana muttered as they exited. Once in the car, he drove silently, refusing to speak, leaving Puranee feeling uneasy. Mr. Poj, she began hesitantly. Say it. I'm interested in working for Mr. Chukrat. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. He glanced at her briefly before returning his gaze to the road, speaking sharply. That guy's a womanizer. What do you mean? She asked, confused. Puranee, he doesn't really want to hire you. Think about it. His company is one of the best in Thailand. Why would they hire a high school graduate? Use your head. Though his reasoning made sense, his bluntness stung. I see, she replied quietly. The dream of earning 70,000 baht a month vanished. She stared sadly at the business card, starting to believe Pojana might be right. Why would such a prestigious company hire someone like her when even college graduates struggle to find work? You still have a lot to learn, Puranee. Yes, she replied curtly. Wait. He slammed the brakes, turning to look at her, his irritation palpable. He'd been irritable all night and didn't understand why. Are you mocking me? You're overthinking, Mr. Poj. A mere high school graduate like me wouldn't dare mock anyone, she retorted, her sharp tongue returning. Angry, Pojana did something unexpected. He pulled her close and kissed her, trying to slip his tongue past her lips. Shocked, Puranee pushed him away. What are you doing, teacher? He grabbed her again. Initially, it was meant as a disciplinary kiss, but now it felt like he wanted to tame her. Why was she so beautiful that it made him so angry? Asterisk thud. 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 Asterisk. She beat against his chest and arms, refusing to let him deepen the kiss. Her resistance only made him more determined. Since becoming a business tycoon, no woman had ever denied him. A simple offer of money always guaranteed compliance. Stay still, Puranee. No. Let me go. I'll pay you 100,000 baht. Just one kiss. She froze, shutting her eyes in surrender. As he leaned in, an unexpected ache stabbed his heart. Even you, Puranee? It's not supposed to be like this. I'll give you 500,000 if you sleep with me, he said, raising the stakes. Puranee stared at him, unable to process his words. Slap. You're incredibly insulting, Mr. Poj. The sting on his cheek was nothing compared to the pain in his heart. Memories of her mischievous school days flashed through his mind. He smirked faintly, but she mistook it for mockery. You shouldn't be the father of my nephew, she snapped. She was right. He shouldn't have ties to anyone, no matter how much he longed for a warm, loving family. Sit properly. I'll take you home, he said, rubbing his burning cheek. The pain, oddly, was the only thing that felt real to him now. Chapter 10.1. Dressed in her company uniform, Puranee placed a plate of stuffed omelette with meat and vegetables on the table. Panida was already seated with her plate of rice. You don't look too bright today, Pooh. Is something wrong? Puranee forced a smile. No, just stayed up late last night. Really? That's unusual. You usually go to bed early. I was reading a novel on an app. Got carried away, she lied, hoping her sister would believe her. Oh, I love reading too. So, how was last night's event? Did you meet any handsome men? Her sister's question made her pause mid-bite, thoughts drifting to Chukrit and his business card. PPA, what do you think about me applying for a new job? Why? Is there a problem with Mr. Poj? Not wanting to worry her sister, she shook her head with a sly smile. No, it's just that the new place is offering 70,000 baht a month. Wow, that's a lot. But wouldn't you feel bad leaving Mr. Poj? He'd probably be really upset. The image of her former teacher, once kind and gentle, crossed her mind. What had changed him so drastically? Puranee couldn't figure it out. That day, Darren from accounting handed Puranee a file, explaining that it needed Pojana's signature urgently. No one dared approach him at his condo, especially after rumors of a heated argument with his father, Sutton, the night before. This document is critical. It just needs his signature. Darren pleaded. Please, Miss Pooh, make our dreams come true. We're counting on you. The way everyone feared him made it clear how intimidating Pojana had become. Hello, Mr. Poj. I need to get your signature on a document. Where are you right now? Puranee asked over the phone, trying to sound professional. Asterisk, I'm busy. Asterisk, his curt, irritated tone came through clearly, even with the speaker on. Darren and two other employees clasped their hands, silently praying. But it's urgent, and we can't finalize things without your signature. Asterisk, if you're in such a hurry, sign it yourself. Asterisk, can I do that? Darren quickly signaled that she couldn't. Puranee sighed. Mr. Poj, where are you right now? Asterisk, why? I told you I'm busy. You're so. Asterisk. No matter how annoyed he sounded, Puranee wasn't about to give up. I'll come to you. Just tell me where you are. There was a pause before he finally replied. Asterisk, I'm soaking in a hot bath. If you want to come to the condo. Think you're brave enough. Asterisk. Everyone gasped, their eyes wide. Swallowing hard, Puranee muttered under her breath. Why did I have to act so bold? Asterisk. What's the matter? Silent now? Just drop it if you're too scared. Asterisk. I was just breathing. I'll head over right now, she retorted. Asterisk. Humph. I'll be waiting. Asterisk. He probably thought she wouldn't dare, but he clearly underestimated her. Former Teacher Poj or Mr. Poj, it didn't matter. Puranee wasn't afraid of anything. She was once the most notorious troublemaker in her high school, after all. Are you really going, Miss Pooh? Darren asked, her concern evident. Yes, Puranee replied, tucking the file into her eco-friendly bag. Is it worth the risk? Oh, don't worry, Ms. Nutch. Mr. Poj and I are close. It'll be fine, she said lightly, not wanting to aggravate Darren's anxieties. Besides, she planned to be in and out as quickly as possible. Mr. Poj, I'm outside your door, Puranee said over the phone, hoping he'd have the decency to dress appropriately. After all, he might still respect Panida, even if they weren't in love. Asterisk. All right, I'll come open it. You're such a nuisance. Asterisk. His tone had softened slightly, suggesting his mood might have improved. The door opened just a crack, and his voice called out from inside. Hurry up and come in. I'm still naked. She hurried inside, only to find that he wasn't exaggerating. He was completely naked. Oh! Bang. Chapter 10.2. The door shut with a loud bang. Pojana chuckled to himself, walking over to sit cross-legged on a high chair. He poured himself a glass of wine and sipped it leisurely, watching as Puranee continued to scream in shock. Eventually, she managed to calm down. "Mr. Poj," she said, her back turned, her face bright red. "Can you please put something on?" "Put on what?" "Anything. Just cover yourself a little, please." "Oh, fine," he replied, amused. A moment later, he approached her. "It was a struggle, but I managed to put something on." What did he mean by that? She turned to check, only for her eyes to widen in horror. Her scream this time was even louder than before. He had playfully put on a condom but hadn't even put it on properly. Whoosh! She grabbed the nearest object and threw it at him in fury. "You perverted freak! You creep!" Pojana burst out laughing and quickly grabbed a robe to drape over himself. The encounter seemed to amuse him endlessly. "All right, where are the documents? Let's get this over with." Fuming, Puranee stomped over to hand him the folder, then retreated to the far side of the room, still trying to calm her nerves. "Oh, come on. I'm not going to do anything to you. Sit down. I need to review this," he said. Pojana turned his attention to the papers, putting on his reading glasses and positioning himself under the lamp. When focused on work, he had an air of sophistication and charm that Puranee couldn't help but notice. It reminded her of the feelings she once had for him as his student. Feelings that made her stomach flutter like butterflies trying to escape. There's an issue here," he muttered. "Excuse me? What did you say?" she asked. "There's an issue here. Take this back to Darren and tell her I can't sign it yet. The balance sheet doesn't add up." He handed the folder back to her. "What?" "Ms. Nutch said it was all sorted. Now I have to trek back in this heat." Just the thought of braving the midday sun made her groan. She looked at the folder repeatedly before deciding to stand up. "If it's too hot, just wait until it cools down," Pojana suggested. She glared at him. "Easy for you to say, Mr. Poj. You're in an air-conditioned room. I have to roast under the sun and wave down a taxi." "Fine, fine. Sit down first." "Just sit down," he said calmly. Puranee obeyed, glaring at him as she waited to hear what he had to say. "I'll head to the office this afternoon. You can come with me then," he concluded. "So, what should I do in the meantime?" she asked, still grumpy. Pojana smirked. "You could go downstairs and grab a coffee." "Really?" "Sure. Take my card and get yourself something. Just make sure you're back in an hour." "Got it." At the time, Puranee didn't fully understand his instructions, but she didn't care. She was too excited about the idea of enjoying a coffee break downstairs. Chapter 11. Sipping coffee and savoring cake that melted in her mouth was pure bliss for Puranee. The staff were exceptionally courteous, and she enjoyed the pleasant greetings from the condo's residents. Being rich must be nice, she thought aloud, finishing the last bite of her cake. She checked her watch. It's already afternoon. Mr. Poj must be waiting. She quickly handed over the payment card to the staff. Once the transaction was completed, she rushed to the elevator. He's definitely going to scold me, she muttered to herself. Reaching his door, she rang the bell rapidly, but there was no response. Panicking, she grabbed her phone to call him. Asterisk ring. Ring. Asterisk. Bang. The door was yanked open, revealing Pojana's strikingly attractive yet irritated figure. Before Puranee could explain, another beautiful woman in a sultry brown dress stepped into view. Mr. Poj. You do have a guest, the woman said, trailing her finger seductively along his neck. Puranee swallowed hard, feeling uneasy under his piercing gaze. I told you to come back after an hour, didn't I? He said, his tone sharp. Her face fell. She had only remembered he was going to the office in the afternoon, but had completely forgotten about the 1-hour instruction. I am really sorry, she stammered. Mr. Poj, let's go back inside, the woman cooed. Come on, Lucy will make you happy. She tugged on his arm, but he shook her off in frustration. Lucy, you should leave. I just remembered I need to go to the office. Mr. Poj. He shot her a sharp glare, and she quickly nodded. Okay, fine. I'll come back another time. Grabbing her bag, Lucy hurried out. Watching her leave, Puranee decided it was best to make her own exit as well. Wait. Where do you think you're going, Puranee? I am going to wait the full hour downstairs. Come inside, he ordered. And no thank you. Her face contorted in dread, but his commanding tone left no room for refusal. I said come inside, he insisted, his gaze intense. Frightened, she reluctantly entered, feeling like a lamb being led to slaughter. To her surprise, he handed her a nail clipper. Huh, she muttered, confused. Help me clip my nails. Be gentle. Excuse me. Or would you prefer to do something else? Why me? She asked, baffled by the odd request. I like having someone clip them for me while I rest my head on their lap. It's relaxing. What? You expect me to let you lie on my lap? Her eyes widened in disbelief. She had never done anything like this for anyone before. Why are you making such a fuss? I'm paying you, aren't I? No, thank you. I'm not comfortable doing that, she replied firmly. Pojana's eyes glinted briefly. Tossing the nail clipper onto the bed, he yanked off his robe, letting it fall to the floor. Ah, she screamed, covering her eyes as she tried to flee, but he grabbed her and pulled her close. What are you doing? Let me go, she protested. You've grown up beautifully, Puranee. But you've changed. You're no longer kind, you're a pervert, she shot back. Oh, is that what you think? He said, amused. Yes, Mr. Poj. You've changed so much. I used to admire you when you were my teacher. But now, I don't understand who you are anymore, she said, venting her frustrations. Her words caught him off guard, but he masked his reaction with a dry laugh. Quite bold for your age. Are you even 20 yet? Why does it matter? Don't I have a heart? You're the one without one, Mr. Poj. What nonsense are you spouting now? Just because I'm joking, you think you can disrespect me? I'm your boss, Puranee. Then fire me if you want, but you have no right to insult my dignity like this, especially when you're standing there naked, she said, her voice filled with hurt and indignation. Her words seemed to strike a chord, and he released her. You really have grown up. And you're beautiful too. No wonder so many men tried to flirt with you, he said, bending down to pick up his robe. Instead of putting it on, he tossed it into a corner basket and began dressing. You might be wondering why I've changed so much. I want to explain, Puranee, but, even if I do, nothing will ever be the same. So I won't, he said, smiling faintly as he meticulously combed his hair. Puranee crossed her arms, the residual warmth of his closeness lingering faintly. Despite his harshness, he exuded a unique charm. She had often heard that women were drawn to bad boys, but she didn't believe that applied to everyone. In fiction, she might enjoy a mafia-style bad boy protagonist, but in real life, who would want a man like that as a life partner? Why so quiet, Miss Pooh? He teased with a chuckle. Just as they were about to leave for the office, his phone rang loudly. His eyes darkened as he glanced at the caller ID. Puranee watched him answer the call reluctantly, his tone suddenly firm. Yes, father. Ah. It was his father. I'm not interested, and I won't do it, he said curtly before hanging up. Turning back to her, his expression softened slightly. Want to go out? Not as a job, just as a favor. Chapter 12. Pojana drove slowly with Puranee in the passenger seat. The pace was leisurely, almost as if he were running away from something rather than sightseeing as he had suggested. Mr. Poj, where are we going? It's already 3 in the afternoon, she asked, worried about Panida. Though Pojana had been providing her sister with nutritious food, helping her regain some strength, Puranee couldn't help but worry about her sister's condition, especially with the baby on the way. She wanted to spend as much time as possible with her. When I was a teacher, those were the best days of my life. Meeting students every day, teaching physical education, a subject I dedicated my life to mastering. I still remember my first paycheck. It made me cry like a child. All I wanted was to see my mother's face and take her out for a nice meal. Did your mother pass away? She asked gently. He shook his head, his eyes turning red as he sniffled. No, but I wish she had. What? Puranee thought his words contradicted themselves. Wanting to meet his mother but wishing for her death? It made no sense. My mother. She's someone I no longer want to know. She's not a good person, he said, his tone heavy with regret. Why couldn't he just be straightforward? Puranee glanced at her watch anxiously. She desperately wanted to go home. At one point, I knew Panida. We made a mistake and ended up being together. But I felt good about it, he said, switching to the topic of her sister. The mention of Panida struck a painful chord in Puranee's heart. I asked her to be with me, but she didn't want to. See? No one wants me. Not even the Pojana you said you once admired. Did you mean it, Puranee? Suddenly, he turned to her and slammed on the brakes. Puranee was startled. What? If I went back to being a good person, would you consider being with me? He asked, his voice calm yet piercing. Her stomach churned, and the butterflies inside her began to stir once more. His face inched closer to hers. And then he kissed her. His warm lips pressed gently against hers, and this time, she didn't resist. Her heart yearned for him just as much. Pojana's embrace was warm and intoxicating, a mixture of faint cologne, his natural scent, sweat, and a deeper yearning. They became one, their feelings for each other finally aligning, though it had taken far too long. He tenderly guided her through the passionate moment, surprised by how deeply he desired her. More than any woman he had ever known, even more than her sister. He realized she was what he had wanted all along. Oh, how he regretted not understanding his heart sooner. From now on, he vowed to be true to her and to himself. As their passionate moment ended, Puranee found herself crying. Tears flowed freely as she thought of her sister. She berated herself for giving in to her feelings for the father of her sister's unborn child. Pooh, what time did you get home last night? You didn't even wake me, Panida asked as she shuffled out of her room, her body aching more than usual. She noticed her younger sister sitting curled up in front of the TV and couldn't help but feel concerned. PPA, I need to confess something, Puranee said, her voice trembling. Hearing those words, Panida's heart sank. She quickly sat beside her sister, her worry evident. Puranee began to cry uncontrollably. What's wrong, Pooh? Did someone hurt you? Panida asked, her tone filled with care. PPA, I'm so sorry, Puranee sobbed, throwing herself into her sister's arms. She cried as if her heart was breaking. The previous night, Pojana had tried to persuade her to stay, but once she regained her senses, she fled home and refused to answer his calls. Calm down, Pooh. Take a deep breath and tell me, Panida said, trying to soothe her sister despite her own unease. PPI. Mr. Poj and I. We. Puranee stuttered, ashamed to say it out loud. Panida's face darkened as she spoke firmly. I have to call him. We need to talk. PPA, please don't be mad at me. I'm so sorry, Puranee pleaded, bowing her head in remorse. Her sister pulled her into a comforting hug. I'm not mad at you, Pooh. I'm mad at him. If he loves you, if he wants you, then why didn't he do things the right way? Why did he have to act like this? Panida's voice was heavy with frustration and anger, not out of jealousy, but out of concern for her sister's dignity. Though she didn't love Pojana herself, she couldn't forgive how he had treated Puranee. She resolved to call him and settle everything by the end of the day. Chapter 13.1. 4 months later. The recovery room was filled with life and joy. A healthy baby boy was born during the month of love. His mother had overcome countless obstacles, channeling all her strength to deliver her son naturally, as many mothers dream of. When her child let out his first cry, Panida wept tears of happiness. The nurse placed the chubby newborn beside her and gently stimulated her nipples to encourage milk flow as quickly as possible. You did it, Mom. You're the best, the nurse said, her tone filled with admiration. Against all odds, Panida's cancer had subsided. She reflected on the moment her younger sister became Pojana's bride. He had promised to care for Puranee as devotedly as he had cared for Panida. That was all Panida had ever wanted. She had made a vow in her heart that if her baby was born safely, she would dedicate the rest of her life to spiritual practice, living as a nun. For her, this was an exchange of her life for the true love of two people. There was nothing left to worry about. Her son would be raised with love and care by Puranee and Pojana. In a few days, after spending a month nursing her child, she would be ready to take her vows and enter a life of spiritual commitment. Even if the cancer were to return, Panida felt at peace. Life was fleeting, but at least she would have embraced spiritual purity before the end. 2.5 years later. Today is Pukara's first day of school. And it's also the grand opening of Daddy's new restaurant. Yeah. After school, I'll take you to visit Mother Pa, your other mom. Okay, Pukara. Pukara, a bright and charming child, had a knack for winning hearts. He had charmed his grandfather so completely that even Mr. Suthan agreed to let Pojana open his restaurant and permanently leave behind his grey market dealings. Pojana had explained his reasons clearly. This career may bring in a lot of money, but I don't want to take risks that could leave your grandson fatherless. Don't you agree, father? At the time, Mr. Suthan had reluctantly agreed. Though he himself couldn't escape the life he had built, he allowed his son to leave it behind. Suthan vowed to shield his family from harm as best as he could. Chapter 13.2. Sister Pa was eagerly waiting. When she saw the small figure of her son holding the hands of his biological father and adoptive mother approaching, she almost ran to embrace them. However, clad in her white robe of devotion, she refrained and instead greeted them with a warm smile, collecting herself and maintaining her calm. Pay respect to Sister Pa Pukara, Puranee encouraged her son. At an adorably innocent age, Pukara pressed his hands together in a respectful Y. His features resembled Panida's, and he even bore a birthmark on his neck similar to his biological mother. Tell Sister Pa about your school, Pukara, Puranee suggested as the group sat under a pavilion, the breeze from the bamboo grove near the fish pond providing cool relief. The little boy recounted his day at school in great detail. Sister Pa discreetly wiped away her tears, overwhelmed with joy at seeing her son so bright and lovable. She silently thanked the heavens and everything in the world for her happiness. Sister Pa has a gift for you. Keep this necklace with you always, she said, presenting a small chain as a gift for his first day at school, even if it was only at a childcare development center. Thank you. I love you, Sister Pa, Pukara exclaimed. HM. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged the boy tightly, pouring all her love and affection into the embrace. Puranee and Pojana watched with concern but chose to respect the emotional moment. Don't worry, Sister Pa Pojana and I will take the best care of Pukara. Today is also the grand opening of our restaurant, Puranee reassured her. Panida reluctantly let go of the boy. He smiled at her, and she returned the gesture warmly. Won't you come back to live with us? How are you feeling? Are you still in pain? Puranee asked, worried. Not much anymore. It must be because I'm living in a peaceful place, spreading kindness to all beings. The pain has subsided, and I've decided to remain like this forever, Panida replied calmly. She had no lingering attachments left in this world. The son born from a night of misfortune was now with loving caretakers who would ensure his happiness. With her heart at peace, she embraced her spiritual calling. Puranee and Pojana, along with Pukara, bid farewell and headed home. Sister Pa stood watching until they disappeared from sight. Then she turned back toward her dwelling, feeling a profound sense of serenity. The first evening at the newly opened restaurant was chaotic. It wasn't until 9 p.m. that they managed to close. Both Puranee and Pojana looked disheveled from the day's work, but Puranee still made time to bathe Pukara and read him a bedtime story as she always did. Is Pukara asleep, Puranee? Pojana, freshly showered and dressed, entered the room. Despite being exhausted, he felt immensely proud. His father, Mr. Suthan, had even come to celebrate the restaurant's opening earlier in the day. Yes, he's asleep. He's half an hour late tonight though. We'll need to adjust his routine by 30 minutes tomorrow, Puranee said, glancing lovingly at her son. When asleep, Pukara looked just like Pojana. His smile was reminiscent of Panida's, and his mischievousness mirrored Puranee's own. It was a marvel how one child could embody traits from 3 different people so harmoniously. Pojana climbed onto the bed, lying down and wrapping an arm around Puranee. Let's visit my mother tomorrow. His mother had passed away a year ago from AIDS, and it had been Puranee who convinced Pojana to stay by her side during her final days, allowing her to pass away peacefully. Of course. Whenever you'd like, my dear boss, she replied playfully. Ha! Boss. He was puzzled. The lively woman turned to face him, her eyes shining with the energy and love that she always seemed to have in abundance. You're the head of our family, aren't you? It felt as though she was placing a mantle of authority in his hands, a responsibility he gladly embraced. He smiled broadly at her, gently kissing her forehead with all his love. I couldn't be happier, he said. Puranee was overjoyed that the gentleman she had once admired had returned. And she vowed never to let him grow cold again. Ever. Subscribe now for more interesting stories.